All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I told you, we are getting ready to start the trial. This is a trial to determine the guilt or innocence of the defendant.
Tonight, police issued a missing endangered alert for Shannon Watts and her two daughters. Her husband says she's been missing since Monday morning.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. This is Dr. B. So we're starting Circumstantial today, and I will be going over some of the evidence and some of the inconsistencies with regards to the mistress. So we're starting this quote-unquote mock trial. Obviously, this is going to be a lot different than an actual court trial because it's a YouTube video and it's not meant to be professional in any way. So this is just simply playing with video clips and playing with our imagination. I think the reason why I wanted to do a mock trial is because it'll help me organize some of the information that we have, and it's a lot of information obviously, so it's just helpful for me to organize it in a way where I can have a list of everything. Now, I've been working on this forever, so if you guys have any suggestions or any ideas of what I could do to make it more interesting or fun, let me know. But the point is to get the evidence all in one place and also to have a little bit of fun and learn something new. In order to familiarize ourselves with some of the terminology and the legalese, I've included an audio clip of a prosecution opening statement, well, part of it anyways, just to help us understand the difference between the different types of evidence that can be introduced in trial, and also to get a better understanding of what circumstantial evidence really means and what that entails. From that same trial, I also included the jury instructions given by the judge, and that's just to give us a better idea of how juries process evidence and what they're asked to do. So I'm basically going to ask you to keep that in mind. So let's begin.
You're so damn sexy.
Now, the defense in this case very well may dwell on the fact that this is a circumstantial case. They may harp on that throughout the entirety of the trial. And they would be absolutely right. It is a circumstantial evidence kind of case. You see, in criminal law, there are two kinds of evidence. There's direct evidence, and then there's circumstantial evidence. Well, what are the differences? Direct evidence. An example of direct evidence would be a person coming forward and saying, hey, I was hiding in the woods that night and I saw the whole thing. And then they get on that witness stand and they tell you what they saw. Another example would be, here's a video of the crime that occurred, the exact time it occurred. That's about the only two examples of direct evidence I can think of. What is circumstantial evidence? Circumstantial evidence is everything else. Most criminal cases, the truth is, most cases are based on circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial, the root word is circumstance. What are the circumstances surrounding this case, this situation, this crime? Folks, to be honest with you, I would almost sometimes rather have a circumstantial case as a prosecutor, because circumstances don't change. Eyewitnesses get things wrong all the time. As a matter of fact, as attorneys, we're taught that eyewitness testimony, in most cases, is the most unreliable of evidence. But circumstances history does not change. Once a consequence has occurred, it's done. Let me give you an example. This is a true story. I'm coming home one day, I'm running late, I'm on my phone, and I pull in the driveway. On my way home, it starts to thunder very loudly, just thunder. I finish my phone call when I pull into the driveway and I hang up my telephone. And I run into my house. I run into my house. When I get in there, my wife looks up from a nap she's taking on the couch, and sees me drenched. I'm soaking wet. I'm dripping. She says, I didn't know it was raining outside. And I'm ill because I've worked a long day and I'm a sarcastic person anyway. So I look at her and said, no, honey, it's not raining outside. I found out I hit the lottery, and to celebrate, I ran through the neighbor's sprinklers on my way in. Well, she gives me the look she always gives me when I say something unnecessarily sarcastic. Because she knows that's ridiculous. She knows I didn't run through any sprinklers. How does she know I didn't run through the sprinklers? She uses circumstances. She knows it's thundering outside. What accompanies thunder? Rain. She knows I'm wearing a suit and tie, and now I spend a lot of money on my dry cleaning. So she knows I didn't ruin my suit and tie by running through the sprinklers. And last but not least, she knows it's absurd what I'm saying because we don't play the lottery. So she just used all these circumstances, these puzzle pieces, put them together when any one of them by themselves may not mean anything, may not show you anything. When she put them all together, she realizes I'm full of it and that it's raining outside. That was a reasonable conclusion to come to.
I thought it was interesting that circumstantial evidence is literally everything. You would think that like cell phone data and just things like that are outside of a person's control, like where you ping. I always thought that was like concrete evidence, direct evidence, but it's not. So when people tell me to leave NK alone, I can't, because the circumstances that she was in and around are just too much to ignore. And that's primarily why I wanted to do this video, this series. Now let's listen to the jury instructions.
The defendant has pled not guilty to these indictments. The state, therefore, has the burden of proving each of the elements of the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. It will be your duty, ladies and gentlemen, to decide whether or not the state has met that burden. Your purpose as jurors is to find and determine the facts of this case. You are the sole judge of the facts of this case. If at any time I make any comment regarding the facts, you must disregard my comments. You are to determine the facts from the testimony you hear and the other evidence introduced during the trial of this case. It is up to you to determine the inferences which you feel may properly be drawn from that evidence. Your job is to take the law as I give it to you and apply it to the facts as you find those facts to be, from the testimony of the witnesses and any other evidence that is introduced. After that, you will then render your verdict, a true and just verdict, under the solemn oath that you just took. It is your solemn responsibility to determine the guilt or innocence of the defendant, and your verdict must be based solely on the evidence as it is presented to you in this trial, and on the law as I instruct you during and at the close of the trial. The evidence in this case will be presented to you by the testimony of sworn witnesses from the witness stand and any other exhibits that might be introduced into evidence during the trial of this case. Now, in determining what the true facts are in this case, you must decide whether or not the testimony of the witnesses is believable. It is my responsibility to rule as a matter of law as to whether certain testimony is admissible at all or not. But once testimony is admitted into evidence, whether or not you believe it is solely for you to determine. You have the right to consider anything that is in the record that will help you evaluate the testimony of the witnesses.
So the judge is basically instructing us to look at the evidence and to make an inference as to what the facts are surrounding this case. So let's start with the opening statement, where I pretend to be a crappy lawyer. So what I'm basically going to do is provide a summary of my theory of what happened. I'm not specifying any crimes at this point, even though I know that in actual court you have to have charges. But for the purposes of this mock trial, this completely fake fictional trial, I'm going to try to prove that she was involved.
Hi. It's me. I guess just call me back when you have a chance. Bye.
As you've heard, opening statements are not facts. In opening statements, we will present our theory of what happened that fateful morning. The only evidence is the testimony of witnesses and exhibits presented during trial. Now, I submit to you that the pieces of evidence in this case are just like a puzzle. The pieces in and of themselves may not show you anything, but when you put them together and you use your common sense to come to a logical conclusion, you will find that this defendant is definitely not as innocent as she would like us to think. In this virtual mock trial, we're going to look at the who. Evidence will show that the who is the individual whose cell phone activity pings in significant locations at significant times during significant days. The who is a person who desperately tried to cover her tracks after the murders. The who is the individual misleading investigators, presenting herself as the victim and talking in circles, essentially hindering the investigation. The who is the individual who said she met her co-defendant CW in June of 2018 and that she had no prior knowledge of this family. The who is also the individual who Googled CW's name in August of 2017, and that's 1 year before the murders. The who is the individual who also Googled CW's wife's name in January of 2018, and that's 7 months before the murder. The who
You're so damn sexy.
is this defendant. Well, the lies and the self-victimization worked for her for almost 2 years. You see, she wants you to think that she's this seemingly normal 31-year-old who just got caught up at the wrong place at the wrong time. You will hear from her that in early 2018, she began working at a geoscience consulting agency as a contractor in the health and safety department. She'll tell you that in March or April of 2018, she was contracted to work at Anadarko, starting her dream job of working in an office as opposed to working out at the oil fields, which she had done for years prior. The evidence will also show that this defendant moved to an apartment near North Glen sometime in January. She will also tell you that she met CW at the end of May or early June. She will tell you that they kept it professional at first and only began a romantic relationship at the end of June or early July. You'll find that evidence will show that this defendant and her lover began a sexual relationship on June 27th, 2018. This is the same exact day that CW's wife left for her 5-week trip to North Carolina. Email exchanges that began in early June between the defendant and her lover will show that the defendant, at the very start of this relationship, started sending mixed messages to her newfound love interest. On the 12th of June, only 1 day after CW's wife made an official announcement on Facebook announcing that she's pregnant, this defendant tells her lover that not only does she want to be in his life, but she wants a life just like this. But in the very same paragraph, she changes her story and tells him that she would rather stay professional and not build that life with him because she believes in karma and he already has what she wants.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I am having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
This string of emails may very well be what started the domino effects of this senseless tragedy. And it will also be the very first lie that you will hear from this defendant. You will learn that CW's wife had been a thorn in her eye from the very first time she chose to engage in an intimate relationship with a married man. You will hear her putting pressure on her lover by sending him mixed messages. You will hear CW himself describe in detail the progression of this defendant's cold-blooded and selfish descent into a twisted game of cat and mouse. Of course, we're not saying that infidelity is a crime. In fact, statistically in the United States, infidelity happens almost equally across gender, and it's the leading cause of divorce. However, murder is a crime, and it's punishable by law with life in prison without parole. Now, our girl here is 31 years old. Let's say if she's convicted and sentenced to the maximum penalty, she faces spending the rest of her natural life behind bars. How long is that? Well, current life expectancy for women in the United States is roughly 78 years of age. So it's clear that the defendant could face at least between 30 to 40 years if convicted. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that that's 30 to 40 reasons for her to lie in this case. I'm not saying that we're accusing this defendant of the actual crime of murder, regardless of whether or not she committed the actual crime with her own hands. This is not what this is about. The mock trial that we're doing is seeking to prove the extent of her involvement in this crime. If you find her guilty, she's considered equally responsible for the crime or crimes if she knowingly and deliberately aids, abets, or in any way participates in the planning or execution of the crime of felony murder. She's an accessory. And no, I don't mean an accessory like a handbag or a mattress. This story begins in Weld County on Monday, August 13th, 2018 at approximately 1:35 p.m.
Weld County Communications, this is Stacy. Hi, Stacy. My name's Nichol, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and I have called and texted. I've come to her house. She's not answering the door. She's not responding to text messages, phone calls. I've had other friends reach out to her. None of us can get her to respond to us, and her car is here.
What's her name?
Shanann Watts.
And her husband's name is?
His name is Chris Watts. I just want to know if she's okay.
Polygraph failed it. Too much emotions. So I mean, they're not gonna let me go.
Is there any reason why they shouldn't?
They know I had an affair.
Anything else you want to tell me? What's going on?
I don't want to protect her.
You don't want to do what?
What?
I don't want to protect her.
She hurt him?
Yeah. That's tough, not hurt her.
You hurt her?
Well, you guys want to choked both of them to death. I freaked out with the champagne.
So she killed those 16 and choked them to death.
That's just rage. I'm hiding.
Needless to say, he was arrested and booked that same night. If you're thinking that that was fast, you're not the only one.
Whoa, wait, like we're not done. We have all these things to do. We didn't examine all the evidence. We didn't interview every witness we needed to. We didn't do all of these things that you would do in a normal investigation because he stopped the clock.
The clock was stopped? But wait, Tammy, what happened next?
We were preparing for a murder trial, and a murder trial that was going to last years.
Now, this is the part that I find weird. How is it that if someone confesses to one murder, because at the time, Chris claimed that he only killed Shanann after she killed the girls, right? So the clock is stopped just because of that, and the investigation ends. And we know that the investigation didn't end on the 15th of August, obviously. They were still investigating. They were still looking at all the evidence. But what they failed to do is to follow up on some very, very important leads, very important interviews that they didn't conduct. At the time that their little investigation was going on, they actually didn't have the cell phone data for the mistress. So they don't have a bulletproof alibi for her, and they don't have the location information for her at that time. You will also hear her tell you that on Sunday before the murders, she allegedly spends the day at the museum with her family. She comes home and doesn't remember a damn thing she does for the rest of the night, other than, laundry and sleeping. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where I need your common sense. Oh yeah, did you know that on the night before and the early morning hours of Murder Monday, this defendant holds a 111-minute phone call with her lover. But lo and behold, she claims to have little to no recollection of the exchange that happened over the course of the longest phone call between the defendant and CW in their entire history of communicating. Let me just say it again for the people in the back. This defendant does not have an alibi that has been checked out and verified by law enforcement. This defendant holds the longest phone call that is recorded in their history. But the nerve of this defendant does not stop there. Did you know that she has not allowed investigators to question her supposed alibi? And as a matter of fact, she demanded that the investigators in this case not contact this individual because she wanted them to just leave him alone.
Or Jim, and I'm not saying you have to go to.
Just leave Jim alone. Jim does not need to be wrapped up in this.
I don't really want to involve him in this. That is not fair to him. That's not, no, if I do not have to do that.
As such, you should not consider her alibi as facts in this case. Instead, do evaluate her testimony and decide for yourselves whether or not she's a credible source. As far as all of us are concerned, her alibi could be nothing more but an imaginary ninja, as we've yet to hear his statements regarding her whereabouts. And in addition to her interviews and testimony, we would also like to present some digital forensic evidence that shows a damning footprint that will call into question her credibility, but also her involvement in the case. What I believe we have evidence of is, at the very least, a grossly mishandled investigation, or at the very worst, a cover-up. Having the burden of proof, I'm confident that you, as the fact finders, will use your open mind and common sense and sharp reason to evaluate this evidence. And I would be very interested to hear your conclusions. Now, this is just the opening statement. We also have more to come from the defense side as well. So stay tuned for that. I hope to present both sides of the argument so that you can make up your own mind. So thanks for listening. Before we go, I just want to give a shout out to my mods for helping me out with this project and for doing some of the research. I really appreciate their input, and I also appreciate everything that they do. So, Glitter Squad forever. As usual, please let me know what you think in the comments. Also, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and if you would like to support the channel, feel free to join our Patreon. And we also started a merch shop, so feel free to check that out. We're actually working on a project of coming up with the missing files. So all the money that is collected through YouTube, Patreon, or the TeeSpring merchandise thing app is going to be put towards collecting money for the Frederick files. We have still to make an official announcement about that, so if you would like to contribute or learn more, let us know. Thanks.